Hello, everybody, and welcome to this lecture on Chapter 21. Chapter 21 is actually divided into two parts or two topics, and they're interrelated. But we're going to start first with Part 1, which is on flexible budgets. Now, we already learned in Chapter 20 about budgets a little bit, and we learned that budgets are basically a plan. So the businesses plan what they expect to do within the next month or quarter or year, however long they set their budget for, but it's their plan and it's the plan for what they're going to do to achieve their goals. And the budget is helpful in that it allows businesses to communicate their goals to all of their employees and coordinate all of their employees to achieve that goal because there are so many people involved in the process. You need all of those people to be working towards that same goal. And the budget also should help motivate your employees also to achieve those goals. It kind of sets a target or sets an expectation for them so that they can then meet that target. But budgets are also helpful in terms of control. And by control, I mean allowing businesses to see if they are meeting their goals or how close they are to the plan, right? The hope is that everybody's following the plan, and control means making sure everyone is following that plan. And how we do that is through the process of comparing your actual results to your budget or your plan. And that's where we come into play here in Chapter 21 is the control piece of the budget process, which is once we've developed our plan, developed our budget, and everyone's been working towards it, hopefully, then we have to compare our actual to our budget. And that essentially is where all of our employees, we ask ourselves, did we meet our goals? So for each different type of employee, they're going to have a different responsibility to meet those goals. So we're going to ask ourselves, well, did we meet our goals? And what are we going to do about it if we didn't? So this is what a budget performance report looks like. This is a very shortened one. It doesn't have a detail of all of the specific costs within it, but it's just to kind of give you an idea of what a budget performance report does. Is we take our budgeted amount, whatever our budget or our plan was for our sales and our expenses in order to come up with what our income is. And then we compare that budgeted amount to our actual results, right? What we really sold, what our real expenses were, and what our real income was. And then from there, we calculate the variance or the difference between budget and actual. So like I said, the variance is the difference between budget and actual. So if you go ahead and you calculate the difference between each of these items, so here for sales, the difference was $13,000. For variable costs, the difference between budget and actual was $4,500. And for fixed costs, the difference between budget and actual was $2,000. So then the overall difference between income from operations for budget and actual came out to $6,500. Now, it's not enough just to know what the difference is. We need to classify the difference as either favorable or unfavorable. Okay, so that's what these U's and F's over here stand for. Okay, favorable means that this is going to result in income higher than the budget amount. Unfavorable means it's going to result in income lower than the budget amount. And favorable, obviously means it's in our favor. It's something that's going to be good for us. And for businesses, they always want to make more money. So anything that causes us to make more money is going to be favorable. Anything that causes us to not make as much money is going to be unfavorable. So for example, here you see, well, our sales was lower than our budget. Well, that results in unfavorable because it means we're not making as much money as we thought. So our revenue was less than we thought. Okay, for expenses, in that case, our variable costs were less than what our budget was. So we're going to say that that's favorable because lower costs lead to higher income, which is favorable. Okay. So the question now is, well, why did our overall income here decrease? So if you look here, our overall income was $6,500 and it was unfavorable because it was less, right? We only made $96,000 even though we planned to make $102,500. So why did our income decrease? Well, hopefully you noticed that the reason for the decrease had to do, at least partially, to sales, right? We thought we were going to sell 7,500 units. Instead, we only sold 7,200 units. So, as I mentioned, the budgetary control process is we're going to compare our actual to budget to see how we did, how we met our goals. And obviously, we didn't meet our goals. Our income was less than we thought. Okay, but the next step is to take action. Okay, what are we going to do about it? If we see that we're not meeting our goals, why is this happening? And we need to talk to certain people about that and say, why didn't you follow the plan, right? Our whole point in setting this budget or this plan was to communicate, coordinate, motivate, get everyone to follow the plan. Well, obviously, some people are not following the plan. And so we need to take action and do something about it. Okay, so going back to what our performance report, we see, okay, well, sales were unfavorable, but our variable costs were favorable and our fixed costs were favorable. Okay, so now, looking at those differences and we need to take action and do something about it, we need to talk to those managers, right? So how are we going to evaluate these managers? Now, keep in mind, we have the sales manager here who's in charge of sales. And we have the production manager here who's in charge of production and therefore, in part, responsible for different costs, right? Such as direct materials, direct labor, overhead, all the costs of making your product. So how would you evaluate these managers? Take a minute and think about it. So I'm thinking, if you put a little thought into this and try to figure out how are we gonna evaluate the sales manager? Did he do a good job or not? Well, I'm looking here that the variance was 13,000 unfavorable, causing us to lose money. I'm gonna say sales manager. Nope, you didn't do so hot. You were not part of did not contribute to us meeting our goals, so you might give them a thumbs down. I don't mean a thumbs down like that, but obviously you'd have to talk to them and figure out, what's going on, try to get them to meet the plan, okay? But as far as the costs, we see that they are favorable. And so therefore, you might look at the production manager and go, oh yeah, production manager is doing a good job. He kept costs down, and so therefore that helped us to make more money overall. However, there's something you need to keep in mind. What is the budget based on? And this is reviewed from chapter 20. Okay, how did we start our entire budget process? Well, we started it with sales. Okay, so the whole budget was based on selling a certain amount of units. And if you go back to our budget, it was 7,500 units. That's what we thought we were going to sell. That was what our entire budget was based on. But now that then actually impacts all the rest of the budget, specifically the production budgets, which tell us how much it's going to cost us for direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead. So the entire budget is based on that certain sales level of $7,500. But the problem with that is that if you recall how certain costs operate, Well, certain costs are directly based on sales, right? So this was the example I gave you, I think, from chapter 18, variable costs, right? Variable costs are going to, as you, whatever, in this case, buy more videos or make more product, your costs are going to go up, right? You buy one video, it's $15. You buy a second video, it's $30. You buy a third video, it's $45. And you notice the more you use, the more you go up. Same thing with production costs that are variable. The more units you sell, the more cost you're going to have. So therefore, our budget, the whole thing was based on selling 7,500 units. That means that our sales amount was based on that and our variable costs were based on that. But in actuality, we only sold 7,200. So what's happening is that we our costs are based on a number of units that's not accurate. Therefore, we're comparing apples to oranges. Okay? It's like you're comparing someone, as like if someone was trying to compare you guys, right? Regular accounting students to a CPA firm manager who's been working in accounting for 5 to 10 years. You guys are not the same. You can't make that comparison. It's comparing two totally different things. So we're expecting our financial results selling only 7,200 units to be the same as what we would have if we sold 7,500 units, but that's not right. Okay, these are totally different and we're comparing apples to oranges, and because of that, we're not really getting a good picture of how our managers are doing. So therefore, what we have to do is we have to flex the budget. Okay, so what a flexible budget means is showing what the budget would look like using actual sales. So if the original budget was 7,500 units and our actual units were 7,200, we're comparing apples to oranges. Okay? So what we need to do is we need to create a flexible budget that's going to show us a new budget of what the budget would look like at 7,200 units. So now we're comparing apples to apples. So how do we do this? Okay, well, the flexible budget process starts with the first step is we need to set the activity level that we want. So the number of units sold. In this case, we want to flex the budget to meet actual. Okay, so our actual units, we sold 7,200. So for our flexible budget, we're going to set that at 7,200 units. Oops, sorry. The next step is we want to identify our costs as either variable or fixed. And that concept, again, is reviewed from Chapter 18 to understand how each of these items behave. So if you're not sure of what those terms mean, go back to Chapter 18. But variable costs and fixed costs operate differently under different activity levels, right? So for variable costs, those change in proportion to changes in activity. So in other words, as you sell more, your variable costs will be more. Okay? Fixed costs, on the other hand, will be the same regardless of activity, right? So it's a fixed line. So even as you sell more, those costs will stay the same. So if you go here to our flexible budget, what we have to do is, once we identify items as either fixed or variable, we need to calculate the budgeted amounts under each activity level. For variable costs, because those vary based on the number of units, you have to first figure out the per unit amount and multiply it by the number of units. So that's what we did here. For sales dollars, because that's variable, the more you sell, the more units, the more sales dollars you're going to have. We first have to figure out the per unit amount. So we take the budgeted amount divided by the number of units, which is 7,500 units, and we get a per unit amount of $100 per unit. Then we take the $100 per unit cost, multiply that by the actual number of units, and that gets us 720,000.